Hi everyone, welcome back into our studio. What I'm going to be doing, because I did this 30 days, 30 minute, 30 rows challenge, and then I had some great questions after that. Those acrylic, techniques and stuff that I showed during that time, real quick and easy work on that, but how would you apply it to larger compositions? How do you go about, as an artist, imagining, or what techniques do you use to do larger compositions? And I thought that that is a wonderful question, because I get a lot of people with asking me those types of questions. So I thought I would film you another composition and show you how to do it. First thing is, don't think as an oil artist. Now, I was an oil artist for 10 years. I let all of that go. And when I paint acrylic, I don't paint as an oil artist. One of the big things people always think about oils is that you've got to have that wet so you can blend. Well, if you're blending, then you have the wrong color down. Acrylic artists have to spend a little more time on the palette, concentrating on the tone. We have techniques that allow us to blend, okay? But what makes it better and easier is if we get rid of all of that stuff that we learned as an oil artist, myself included, and I start to think purely and completely as an acrylic artist. Now, which medium do you choose? Everyone likes a different type of medium. I don't care what it is that you paint in, everyone likes a different type of medium. I paint with the Heritage Multimedia paints. That's all I use. The acrylics, that's all I've used for, the last, 12 years. That's all I have used. I've been an acrylic artist for over 35 years now, and I was an oil artist for 10 years prior to that. So, there's a lot that of techniques and stuff that I've acquired over time, acrylic techniques that would help you out quite a bit. And I'm going to show you some of those. But first off, let's think as acrylic. Don't think about blending. We'll think about acrylic, okay? All right, so what I'm going to do is do a composition here for you. And what I did is I have a board. This is a 16 by 20. I have a nice 16 by 20 frame right over there that this is going to go into. So I thought I'd paint this, and I have a nice room for it to go into as well. So it is 16 inches wide, 20 inches high. That's a standard canvas size through here. This is a 1/4 inch ply, an oak ply, 7-layer oak ply, very stable surface. I like it. I prepared this with our canvas prep medium. I give them 2 coats and then sanded it lightly with 180 grit sandpaper. Now, you can use canvas, you can use whatever you want. The reason why I do like to use the wood surface as opposed to a canvas surface is how much detail I'm going to be giving to those flowers. If I'm giving a lot of detail to those flowers, I don't like the bumpiness of the weave of the canvas. So either I have to fill that weave up with multiple coats of the prep medium, or I go to a board, and I like going to a board. And I got this particular board here, cost me about $5, and it is completely when you prep both sides and stuff like that, it's completely archival. You don't ever have to worry about these colors or anything degrading on the surface. And then I just put it on the board here, and a lot of people ask me, how do you stick the board up on there? I use double-sided, a real cheap, very inexpensive double-sided carpet tape, so I can peel it off really easy when I'm done. But it just sticks up right in place. I put a little piece of double-sided carpet tape there, and now I have it well off the surface, and I can work on it any way I want. Okay, so let's get into this. Since this is 16, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to make a mark, and I'm going to just draw down a line right here, but that's my center line. This is my center line of my canvas here. So usually when I do compositions and stuff like that, I don't like to center up everything. So now I know where that center line is in it. And this is, people ask me about this too. This is just a big ruler. You get it for a couple bucks at the Home Depot. I cut a chunk off and then turned around and put a couple screws, glued it in. And then I gave it a coat of varnish too, so I can paint on it and wipe it off and clean it all off as well. Okay, so going up this way, we have our center line is going to be right about the center here of the height is going to be somewhere right around in here. Now, I use that normally for helping me determine you know, the top of a vase or something like that, I usually will want the top of my vase coming somewhere right around up here into the center. So if this is center, now I determine which way I'm going to bring the light in. I'm going to bring the light in this time from upper left. That's one of my favorite things to do, is bring it in from that side. You can just flip it over and bring it in this side if you like to paint in that way as well. But I'm going to bring it in this way, which means what I'm going to do is actually slide over the center line of the vase a little bit, so it's not quite exactly on center. So I might move the vase over just a bit right here and put down a line right here like this, which will correspond to the center line of my vase that I want to use. And I want the top of the vase maybe right up here. So here I've just moved over a couple inches, put the top of the vase. I want to leave the bottom of the vase, I want to leave some room here to develop some flowers and some light up here in the front of this particular composition. So maybe I come here. Now what I'll do is I'm just going to put myself out a reference line for where that is going to travel here on the top and bottom here like that. Now, and then I decide how wide do I want my vase over from that. I might make that just a bit bigger, we'll see, and it's easy to do, it's really easy to do. Just keep your lines light and you can do that. But this is the center line of the vase, so if I come over here, let's say I come over here like this, so that's 2 inches. So if I come over here like to 2 inches, so if I drop that corresponding line down and that line down, this gives me a box at which I can kind of imagine my vase in. I might make it a little bigger or a little smaller or something like that, you know, but kind of imagine it. Now I'm going to sketch a vase, one that has a little bit different line. So I'm going to draw a second line down here like that. We're going to put that aside here for a second. And so I'll come over about an equal amount over to here, and what I'm going to do is just drop a nice kind of a curved line down to that outer part right there. Curved line down to that outer part there. And then I'm going to bring down here. Now you can measure over to make sure you're exactly, you will have an ellipse here. This will have an ellipse here, but come over about the same distance here to here, and then I'm just going to drop that line down and drop that line down there. That'll give me a nice shaped vase. I might want that, you know, that's a nice shaped kind of a vase there. I might want that a little bigger, or you can change the shape of it. There's a lot of other things I do, but you know, to make all different kinds of fun vases. Sometimes I'll curve this just a little bit here, curve that line. But once I have my reference lines out, it's really easy to do some of that manipulation of that, and that looks pretty good out there like that. Widen that out a bit. You can bring in a secondary line, like you could drop this in here like this, that to there like that, and then from this, if you're going to leave some room, you could get more decorative on a vase, maybe drop up, you know, come up more square up like this, you know, onto the top, and look at your vase that way. But anyway, it puts your vase on. Put your vase on over here. You have a little bit of room for shadow. You have some room for some nice light and stuff like that to that. The other way to do this is to move your vase towards your light source if you're going to have a lot of room for shadows over here. So sometimes if I'm going to have long shadows, if I'm going to bring it in more light source more in from the front, I will move my vase over to this side to give myself room to develop the shadows. But you know, here onto this table, I might put a rose or something down here, which is very much couchoir. And so what I really, you know, what I spent a long time studying is the Victorian rose designers and how they put their vases and flowers together. Eugene Henri Couchoir, Franz Mortemans, I love those types of, Eugene Pettit, I love those types of artists, and I studied them for a long time, recreating their paintings and their techniques in acrylics from oils, and I love how they put floral compositions together. So we'll kind of find something like that. Now, let's come in and decide onto our flowers. Light source comes in here like this. I'm going to put some roses in here. And so I want to push one main rose right over here, about that size. That is going to be basically catching the majority of my light source right over here. So I may want to put a secondary rose down, and I like to trail down. That's one of the things I like to do, is trail down roses, trail down sizes. I think you get a lot of really neat compositional stuff that way. Now, Couchois would fill up in here. Franz Mortemans would put leaves all up in here, which was really kind of interesting, leaving areas for stems. So, there's different philosophies here. Let's put a rose and stuff there. Maybe come right up here with a rose down. Maybe have a little one or something like that, trailing off, and right off into there. So it gives you kind of an idea. Now, sometimes I do the sketching with a pencil that's like that. A lot of times I do sketching and stuff with a little burnt sienna and some water. Now, let me talk about the palette here for a second. This is my glass palette. This is what I use when I usually paint at the easel. This is a 1/4 inch tempered glass palette. It's sanded on the side. The acrylics work out here wonderfully. And all I did is just took my tube of acrylic and just squirted it out right here. That's how I do it. And the colors I have out here, since I'm thinking about doing some yellow roses, I have a Darulite yellow, a Hansa yellow, and a yellow oxide. 3 separate distinct pigments. Then I have Naphtha red light, burnt sienna, the pine green, phthalo blue, quinacridone violet, red violet, and of course a bunch of white. And I usually like to take like a bristle brush, and I like the bristle brush because it breaks the edges, because it doesn't give you any type of really defined edge. I like to scrub it around, and all I'm looking for is the set and the size of my roses. So if this is going to be my main queen of my rose, that would be probably her size here, and these sizes here, and this size here. And I just like to break up the paint, the edges of it just a little bit. Now, when it comes to this container that's going to be here, we're going to, just lightly sketch this in. I don't want to do, because I'm going to do a lot of different types of edging techniques and stuff. So I want to be a little bit careful if I'm going to, put an edge into that one there. I want to be a little bit careful here as I push this in, just that I leave some room to change, because I'm probably going to change this container. This is just my first look at the container, and I like to leave myself room where I can change it later on. And we'll have some other blossoms, we'll fill up some other little things, and we'll have a rose here. Maybe this rose will point up that way so it goes to our design. Maybe push this one back just a bit. And then you have to decide, do you want to have your table line back here at all? I like to push it, if I'm going to give any kind of suggestion of a table line, I like to push it back a bit, so that you got to have it back so you have room for your bouquet and stuff back through here. So that gives you just a little bit. Now I may round and soften that container just a little bit more. All right, so you have an idea. That's the whole thing is. You start out and you have an idea. And your sketch and your idea leaves you a lot of room for change, okay? But one of the things that I like to do if I'm going to be painting the roses, which we're going to be painting roses, is I like to set the gaze of the rose. This is which way the rose is going to look within the composition. Now that's very important. And some of you that have studied compositional studies with me, we know we follow a lot of the Dutch philosophies and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different philosophies that you find. You just don't go throw roses on there in different, or just put roses in a vase and then paint what you see. Roses have a gaze. Roses have a power. Roses have a line of movement to them, and so we have to identify that. So I'm going to be using, through a lot of the painting, these are my the Global Arts Fusion brushes, long handle. I use long handle when I paint at the easel, and it's really the best way. Now let me just show you something. So if I have a rose here like this, if I put the center here, Okay, so if I come in and I say, okay, my center is going to come in right here, the gaze of it is pulling down. And so that is pulling your eye as the viewer down. And that's the way a lot of Victorian painters and stuff would set that main queen, what they call the main queen of their composition, with the gaze down. And Mortimer's wasn't, if you're going to follow Mortimer's, he wasn't always like that. He would sometimes set that gaze up. Well, you know, it all depends on where and how much light you're going to be throwing through the composition. But if I come up here like this, and if I put that center of that rose, which is going to be the center of my rose this way, now I'm gazing up. So what I'm doing is your eye is going to, what I want to do is prick your eye in like this and take it like that, okay? And there's a lot of different compositional ways that we, you know, a lot of different rules that artists follow with that, whether you're going to follow the crescent C, whether you're going to follow St. Andrew's cross. There's a lot of different ways in which we put things together. But here I'm going to follow mostly what I call the crescent C here. And so maybe I'll push this one up like this. So this one will look up, and I'll be taking my viewer, traveling them through. Now this one I can push this subtly, maybe out like at this angle here, like that. And so this one will come up that way. Off of this, maybe I want this one out at an angle like this. That's the most important one. This is the one that'll have the most contrast. This is where we'll put the darkest bit of the color is right in there, so it holds that contrast. From there, I have kind of my choice how I want to, you know, move my roses out. I just don't want to point them. You don't want to point all of these the same direction. So I just want to kind of spray them out a little bit. So maybe I'll push this one this way and this one this way. And if I decide to have anything else maybe falling down, I'll push it coming down like that. So the center, the very center of the rose, and let's gaze this one up like that. Now that's almost that same angle there, and that's not really the greatest, so we'll turn it up just a bit more. So that one, so they're not exactly pointed the same way. So this is how you go about if you're setting the gaze of your rose. The gaze of your rose sets this movement around your painting, okay? And it's a great way to really kind of start. It gives you a visualization. Now, I don't have to have all my leaves and all of that kind of stuff in there right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use pure water here for a while. I'm going to make a nice toned blue-gray, I think. And, you know, you have all different kinds of backgrounds that you can do, you know, into the painting. I like a neutral blue-gray back here. I'm going to try that. I do all different kinds. I'm going to take some burnt sienna, some blue, and some white, and make a nice neutral blue-gray here, and push that down. Now, here's one other thing. Look at how much lighter it looks here, you know, on the palette here, and then how much darker here. And that's because underneath my glass here, what I have is a board that is painted as a medium color. So as right now, everything that I do here is going to look light here and go dark, but towards the end of the painting, they'll kind of start to balance, and that's one reason why I put the color board in there. You know, that's the nice thing about a piece of glass. I could put a white board underneath here to start so I can see exactly what the color is, or I can, you know, I know that it's going to change. Also, acrylics will dry a little bit darker, and I always put my value scale right here to help me see where I am. So I'm right here between a 4 and a 5. Now, this is all going to change. This is all going to change, okay? And I'm just going to come right in just lightly into some of my roses, and I'm going to kind of drag this around here, all around the back. We're going to do this background several times. I'm using a 3/4 inch fusion brush this time, and I'm using just water. I want this to dry, so I'm using just some water here. Okay. Now, as I come up here, this is, if I'm bringing my light in like this, I will have a through light situation up there. So I might make this just a bit lighter up there, a bit more light. Later on, we'll add the temperatures to it where it'll get a little bit warmer, but we'll toss just a little bit of light into that up there as we get up there, because that's what's going to happen. You have, in floral compositions, you have that what we call the chiaroscuro of the painting. The light, the dark of the painting. You have through light that goes through. So it's going to be this lightest, warmest here, and then the light goes through back up into here. And the Dutch in the 16th and 17th century started doing that, mainly with a man named Balthasar van der Aust. I studied him for years, his working of color and light. He was the first ones to really start painting a lot of chiaroscuro into a painting. So I put up a little bit of light up there. Now as I come back up over here, we'll have some light. But it's actually going to go darker again back up here, because you have, if light is coming here, you're going to have a darkness that's over here. You have through light. So in essence, if I shine a flashlight like this, it would hit here and then light up also back here just a little bit. But back up over here, it would go dark again. And we're going to want to change the color a little bit. Let's warm the color a little bit. Put a little bit of burnt sienna into it. So we'll change that color up. And I'm just going to scrub this on. We're going to do this a couple times. It's going to change. And so I'm just going to kind of scrub it on here, wet like this. And I want to leave some of this movement. If you're those of you that love Couchois and Mortemans, you realize they leave a lot of movement into their backgrounds here. As long as their flowers and stuff can support it, they leave a lot of movement. And this is one thing that I love about painting with the acrylics, is I want this to dry because I want to be able to change it a lot, and I can do that. Now let's go back down a little bit darker here. I don't worry about covering up everything. I'm just putting in my first look at some of my background and my lighting and stuff like that. Into the front of the painting, let's leave that just right there for a second. Let's go up into the front of the painting and let's warm it. Let's get some yellow oxide into our whites, into some of this color, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna into that. We might put greens into this and stuff. If it starts to drip on you a little, just take your paper towel and wipe some of it back. That's why I like the glass. Let's get a nice warm color. Let's try to keep it up to a 7 or an 8 right up in there. And let's put this warmth right up in here into the front. Here, let's get a bit more light right up here. And scrub it, work the color around a little bit. Just kind of drop it in here. We're going to be working to get rid of all of the white of our board or your canvas. Sometimes I pre-tone a canvas. That's very important. Sometimes I pre-tone a canvas. It all depends on the painting. What I'm going to do, I thought since we're working here with just a pure acrylic, I'd do it just this way today. But let's just put some of this warmth. Let's get this a little warmer. Some nice white and yellow oxide up about an 8 or a 9. Let's drop it right in here for right now. Now it looks darker than that light background, but as soon as we get all our shadows and stuff in, that's going to be quite a bit of difference between those two. So I'm just going to let this diminish down as it goes over to the other side. Just going to find a color right between the two here. Kind of warm, so a little more burnt sienna. And warm because it might be where the light is going to be hitting. So warms it. Let's get a little bit of that light right in here. Let's just drop that in. This is all going to change. This is just your first look at applying your light to your painting. Your warm, a little bit cooler, and your lights to your painting here. Let those diminish back here a bit. Right up in there like that. And of course that's all going to change. That's all going to change. Let's take some of this color right here and just drop it right back in here for right now. It does not have to be super accurate. We're going to be changing it here. But I do want to go a little cooler, a little darker, so a little more blue and a little darker right over here. And that's going to happen with light. And, you know, this comes from years and years of light studies that I did. And and doing all kinds of compositions and light studies and seeing that, and I've painted hundreds of compositions like this, so I know basically how the lights and stuff are going to go. But now one of the things I always tell a lot of artists to do, a lot of students to do this. You make sure you have your path of light. This is what's going to be my path of light. Let's make that a little more white. This is going to be my path of light. It's going to come through there like that. It's going to hit right up and down here on the container. It's going to hit this side of the rose, back up through here, and come right back up through there. So that's the one thing that I want to concentrate on, is my path of light. And, I don't worry about, blending any of that out, or worried about any of that kind of stuff, because what we're doing is we're giving ourselves our first look at our painting. And it's really easy to do it with just the pure acrylic paint and water. That's all you need, pure acrylic paint and water. And I can refine it a little bit more, but that doesn't really need to be done that way. Now, one reason why I like to do the glass is because I can just take it like this and scrape it back up out of the way, clean up my area on my palette really nice. If I want it super clean, I can wipe it down with my paper towel just for a second there and clean that off even more. And it works really well. And you'll see oil artists use it that way all the time. And acrylic artists can do the same thing. We could use, the same type of things, onto the glass palette like this. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is put in some what I call the anchor shadow, some of the darkest shadow areas of this painting, which are going to be right around in here and down this side of my focal point. Now I want that cool. I'm going to take some blue and some red violet here, making that purpley kind of color. I do want a little bit of green in that too, but this is a real dark. This is down here like your 2 color here, real dark. I'm going to add just a little bit of water to this to make it move, and I'm going to leave it really dark and cool right up in here. This is going to come right around my center of interest, and I'm going to put some of that dark. I'm not going to worry about blending this out here. I'll change that later. Now, with an acrylic, if I wanted to soften that out, there's a couple of ways. One is I can take my finger and just shear it out like that. That's called the shear, and that softens it out. Another way is I can just rinse my brush for just a second. So I don't have to take all the color out, but take most of the color out, and then just use the water part of it like this with that and smear that around. And you can use some shear with that as well to take it out. Or you can use some extender, which is, this is a little cap of extender. I'll put it up here. And it just gives you longer working time. I used to use, let me put it this way. 10 years ago, I used to use tons of extender. Today, I'm almost pure 100% acrylic. I don't like to use it that much. There's techniques I like to teach with it. But for myself, I like to paint with the acrylic, so I paint faster. But the extender slows down the drying time. And for most of what I'm doing here, I don't want that to stay wet. I want this to dry. So this dark color in here and stuff like this, I want this to dry so I can work on top of it later on. That's why I do it. So I'm going to push in a little bit of this into some nice shadows here. Might take a bit of water here with that and push some of that down. We're going to have some casting shadows and stuff like that. Maybe a bit more burnt sienna into that as this comes down. I always love to change the tone. So see, I get this blue down to a little bit of the burnt sienna down in here. That makes a beautiful tone in there. We'll drop some of that up over here. That gives us some nice darks into our composition, okay? And so you see the light and the dark. Now, if you want to, you can drop your, an idea of your cast shadow down here, your contact shadow, leaving it a little bit of an ellipse. Sometimes having that on there helps you see your composition a bit. Sometimes I do it right away, sometimes I don't. It's kind of up to you. But so I set where I'm going to do that. Now, if I'm planning anything, I would maybe take this just a little longer out over here. Sometimes I'll just thin it out with some water like that and pull it out and just model it just a bit here. This is the casting area of the shadow from that composition, so it'll go on into my background. And I leave, just like Mortemans and Couchois and everyone else, I leave those marks in there. I don't like to blend them out. That's movement within your composition, okay? And that really, really will help your composition. Let's go in and let's just toss in a bit of our yellows. So we're going to have some yellow coming up in there, and that's nice and bright. We'll want that. That's Hansa yellow. Then I'll take Hansa yellow with a little yellow oxide. And then maybe as I come over to some of my other roses here, more of the yellow oxide, and maybe yellow oxide and a little burnt sienna. This is just an idea of the color. It doesn't have to be perfect. Yellow oxide and burnt sienna for the other ones in the very back. Let's put a touch more Hansa. We'll set up this one right up here. So what I'm doing is I'm not painting perfect roses. I'm looking at my colors and where I'm going to go with my colors. And I actually, a lot of times you go, whoa, man, that's, that really looks a little bit strange. The thing is I paint for contrast and we paint for interest, right? And so you've got to change your mind. And you've got to let that contrast go in there, because we can always push it back and adjust it. But if we start out everything painting soft and blending and softening, it's hard for us to put that pow back into that composition later on. Does that make sense? So it's like, leave it now. Do it now, leave it now. That's a good way to do it. Okay, so I want to do kind of a lighter, I like the blue and the yellow into this composition. And so I want to do kind of a lighter blue, maybe a blue-violet. So a little bit of my quinacridone into my phthalo, some white here into this. Remember, it'll look just a bit darker. But now my background, that white is leaving, so my colors are going to come up a little bit closer now, what you see at the palette, to what's happening in the painting. Let's go more blue-violet right here. Let's go down the shadow side of that container. Let's drop that in here, okay? And remember, we can change the shapes and stuff like that of it for right now. Light's coming in here at about 35 degrees on this side, so my apex is going to be right about in here. So this is really going to be all in shadow, and we're going to change that color a lot here in just a little bit. And then my light's going to come over to the other side, and let's gray that. Lighten that, warm that, gray that with some more burnt sienna and our light. Blue, our blue and our light. So here will come the light. First what we'll do is we'll put in the light dark of the container, and then we'll start to paint it. And then as we start to paint it even more, we'll get into the exact techniques. But for right now, don't blend anything. Just let everything, don't even think about blending. Just let these things, just take these things together like this and run them over each other. Move your brush in all kinds of ways, running them over each other like that, and let that happen. We're going to be adding all kinds of colors and everything into it, and it's going to, trust me, it's all going to work out really nice. Okay? So one of the things that I do as I start to paint the container is I start thinking about, I got to move color, what's going to go on with some of my colors. Well, one color, and we'll put this on, it'll diminish, we'll put it back on. One color that will move through your container is your yellows, being reflected from your flowers and stuff up and around. So always remember to take some of your yellow. There I just took some yellow oxide, tossed some of that color into there. I do like to, at some point in time, say, okay, let's start to find my light source. Well, if I'm going to leave this as a nice cut edge, maybe I'll round that just a bit. My light is up, so my light is going to hit right about in here. Okay, so, and I'll refine that a little bit more. I'm still painting with my 3/4 inch. I'll move down in size in just a little bit, but that's going to be my light, and my light's going to travel down just a bit here, and it will reflect a little bit off the table here. We know that from light studies. Okay? And I might, depending upon how much I put up here into the composition, I might get a bit of the light hitting up here by the top upper ellipse up at the top of the container. Here. Reflected light. Do you have reflected light? Yes, you would. You would have a tiny bit, and let's cool it down. Reflected light is a light that's going to appear onto the shadow side here. It's not going to be as light. I make it just usually 1 to 2 values lighter than what I show on the other side. And let's just drop a little reflected light right for now, right on that side. Now, see what this is doing is, I'm not painting the world's greatest container right now. What I'm doing is setting up the lights where I see the lights, answering some questions. And see, here's the part of the thing. With oil paints, they're very forgiving. So you can go in there and put and change your mind, change your mind, change your mind. Acrylic paints are also very forgiving, but one of the things that I like about it is I can put this on and I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes, and then I have that saved underneath my painting of what I'm going to be putting up on top. With oil paints, the second I go into that, I've changed it, and I've lost my original painting of it. So this is one reason why I like to paint with the acrylics. Now there's people out there that will disagree with me, and that's fine. Everyone has different likes and dislikes. I don't like to say one is better than the other. This one works for me. This is what I do. And I love painting this way. It works for me. And I love that it's clean and I have no smell, and my grandkids paint over there on their table and I have them in the room here. I love all of that. But I can work now on this. I can let some of this dry, and this is dry here already. That line is dry. See, if that was oils, I come in there, any kind of thing I do, I touch, and it's gone. But now that it's dry, I can preserve that and keep that for a little bit as I work other colors. And that's what I'm going to do now, is what we call the broken color of painting. And so what I'm going to do is take some of my colors that I have here, and I'm going to change them up. Like I might add a little green and a little burnt sienna up here to some of this blue. Change some of these tones just a bit and work around this. Now, sometimes I will, in some paintings, I will add extender into my brush to work that tone. But see, it's a slightly different tone, slightly greenish. Here, I like that. I might lighten that up a bit, even add a bit of yellow over here. Just change that tone a bit, and I'll come down this side here just a bit to add a touch or two of that tone in there. I'm going to come close into these values, but I'm going to be changing them here to, and I think I might round this vase just a bit, but, and I'll do that. But I'm going to be changing some of the colors slightly here as I work this. And it all depends, sometimes if I'm doing a real quick painting, I'll leave large changes between my values, and I'm just looking for lights and darks and mid-tones. And sometimes I work them a little bit more, into the painting. It's all how much time I want to put into the painting here. And I'll restate some of that color right down there. Make sure that your light source is always the expressed right up there as the lightest. Now, so as I come in through here, now I have extender. Sometimes I touch into extender just because I like the way that it makes the paint feel. The strokes that I put in across here as I do different angles and different strokes, I like how the extender makes the paint slide. The other thing is the extender will start to blend, and I don't like to blend. I'm not a blender. I'm a tone painter. I mix tones, put the next tone, next tone, next tone. I try not to work them wet into wet too often, because then I lose that interest of the painting, okay? So I have this. This is what's called the broken color. You see the tones changing all around through here. This is basically what I want to do, is lift this off and put this container down this way, put this container, those colors right onto this container. And you'll see I'll use my brush slightly different. Sometimes I'll paint out into something like that, and I'll come back with a slightly different grade tone and take some of it out. There, like that, painting back and forth. This is what gives you the back and forth. Sometimes I'll get like that and I'll slide in with my finger to move it, okay? But I love to paint the tones. If I wanted something soft right between there and there, I know I have to make a tone right between those two. So I take my light right up here to the color I just used, and I put that tone right into there, and it's halfway. This is what we call a half tone. It is halfway between that shadow tone and that light tone, and you can see it helps my softness and my rounding of my container on that side. And I can use water, I can use extender, or whatever you want. It's just making the paint move. So as you see, I don't sit there and go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, blending. Because what I do is I make the tone as close as possible on the palette and then just paint it into position. That keeps the movement, the energy, and the life to the painting. If I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in here, blending it, is because I'm blending it because I made the wrong tone. Does that make sense? Or I've got too big a difference between there, so I have to have the color wet so I can work it. So I make sure my colors are correct on my palette, then I don't have to do that. And it's not hard. You can, if I want to lighten up or expand that light source, I just lighten up a little bit and I expand it over here a little bit further. Let's go a little bit lighter, a little bit further. And see, I just step over to the side and I know this tone is that much lighter than what I just used. So if I put that on, it's quite a bit lighter there already. And I can work that out and around here, around like that. Okay, now let's say that I like this type of movement, especially after I painted it several times. I like that type of movement. But if you want that to soften out, there's all kinds of ways you can do that. One is just take a wet brush and just go over it like that and move the color, and you can blend that out really easy like that, see? So you put the strike on. Now, how long do you have to do that? About 30 minutes to an hour. That's a long time. That's a long time in the painting of a vase that you can, change that tone. So you have really quite a bit of time. But let's come in here and let's add some other accents before I get going too far. Let's take a little bit of our violets and some burnt sienna. Let's get some of those colors in here onto our container as well. See, I like to just splash them around. That's where the interest of the painting comes. And then I can slide over to my blues just a bit and my violets here and toss some of those in a little different color, different tone, working that. As I come across here, what I'm going to do is just start lightening up, and I start to warm up. So I warm it either with burnt sienna or some yellows, but I'll come right across here and start to lighten and warm it up. Now see, the second time I'm coming through with these tones, look at how much more interest that vase starts to have. And the acrylic painter like this will probably paint several layers of tones like this onto the vase to start getting the life to the vase here. Now that's dark is a little high, so I just go over and I take a little bit of light and we'll take that out just like that. It doesn't have to be blended. You could see the brush marks, the calligraphy, and that's what I like to leave, is that calligraphy. If I add extender, like I just did right here, I'll lose a little bit of that calligraphy as that paint slides a bit more, but it does work. You can find whatever you like that works. I like this kind of rounding calligraphy here, like I'll take this light and just move it like this. Okay. Now, again, let me stop right here and say, if you find that, if you're starting to think, oh, this is dry and I can't do it, you're using the wrong tone. You're using the wrong tone, okay? If I want to work up here, where this is pretty much dry up here, I can expand my light and I can just drag that right on down, and that looks pretty good. I don't have to blend that because the tones are correct. They're so close together that I don't need to have that color wet. But if I'm using too dark a color on my brush, for example, and I come up through here, then that color has to be wet as I make try to make all those other tones in between. So you have to shift the way you think. And oils, you can, what I call, and I don't mean this to be insulting or anything, but I call oils really the lazy painting way, because people can paint a light and dark and then work it until they make all kinds of colors in between. With the acrylics, you can't really do that. So you have to make the correct type of tones. But that helps your eye as the artist. And when you start to make all these correct tones, that helps your eye as the artist to start seeing all of the, the correct shapes and everything, the correct way that the colors fold together. And that's what makes my roses and everything that I paint so much prettier, because I see tones. I paint in tones. I'm not a blender. Okay, I'm a tone painter. I'm going to take some of this burnt sienna, and I'm going to want to really make some different types of tones here as well. As I start to expand my broken color out, this will make a prettier vase if I start to add. So here's some of that warmth, that burnt sienna, that will start to appear into the, so you can see that burnt sienna sliding into a little bit of blue there. This is the broken color. This is the beautiful part about tone painting here. And I'm going to expand this out a bit, that light. But that burnt sienna, I want to have that in there as I start to paint those yellow roses and stuff. Here, let's put another redress strike of our light right in there. Okay, so we see that. I like that burnt sienna warmth right in there. We'll push that in and around a bit here, and we'll darken that down here just a bit. That's kind of pretty. We'll get some of those tones in. I'm going to add just a little extender so this paint slides. I'm not using it to blend. I just want that to slide down there a bit. And then I'll put a little bit of the blue. I'm looking at the tones. See the warm and the cool and these tones. I want these tones to go into this painting. Does that make sense? And then head more to the blues and violets over to the other side. We can take a touch of this violet, just a touch of it and stuff over to this side, because that makes a pretty container. See a little bit of that in there, a little bit of that there. Let's just brush a little bit of that into there like that. So now you would worry about, okay, how do you soften that out? All I have to do is take any type of tone that's in between here. I'll make a tone kind of in between those two values. Okay, that's right in there. And use that right in between, and that softens that out, see? That's why I love tone painting. I don't have to blend that out. I soften that out. So I got a little bit of a line there. I'll take a touch of that tone into that area there, and that sets that up. Now, I'm going to come in here, and I'm not going to work the whole vase right now. I'm gonna leave some of that. I'm going to come in and add a bit more light and warmth up here to the front of the painting. This is the most important part of the painting up here. I want to take some of this burnt sienna and stuff like that as well. And I'll let a little bit of that blue travel for right now. I'm not being perfect with any of my lines. Nothing perfect here. But I want a little bit of those tones off of that container to come up here in the front as well. Then we'll put a little burnt sienna and more yellow into that and put some of that in. I'm a tone painter. I love to carry the tones around. All of this will change, but you can see I'm getting that. Now, if I have a harsh line back there, I can mix up another tone in between. I can take a little bit of water and thin that out. I don't always like to do the water like that and thin it out, because that kind of makes it look a little bit too much blended, and I don't always like that. But sometimes, I'm a tone painter. I like to find the tones. So I want to come in here, though, and put out a little bit more light. Towards the end of the painting, you're really going to see I might even use a scraper tool on this to really put in some light up into the front here. I'm going to let this blue and burnt sienna here across the front. See, I just use a tone that's in between the two, and I can start softening that out a bit as it comes back here. Add a little more burnt sienna, a little more blue right over here to the side. Just a touch more blue here, and I'll push that right back there and see how that softens that out. I'm not blending, I'm putting on a different tone here that is working the color. So now I have some of that colors of the vase traveling through, the composition, and we might want to just lightly suggest a bit of those back in here. This is what makes beautiful florals, is the carrying of your color that you'll pick up now and that coming back here into the back. I'll just add a little water into some of this. And let's just push a bit of this in back here. Let some of that color come in there. That's pretty nice. We'll go a little bit darker. Back up over onto this side. In here, maybe a bit more burnt sienna. And see, if I thin this, just a bit of water here, I can come in, even though this is a little darker, work these two together right here like that, and it'll look like they're starting to blend together. But I don't want to do it too much that I lose the movement, the energy within those, within this my calligraphy of my brush. See, I don't want to do it so much that I'm losing that calligraphy. Okay. All right. So, and this is all going to change still a lot more. But this is how I do a lot of stuff, is I start to work them together like this to get a feel for the painting. I don't try to do anything perfect right away. I'm just getting a feel as I start to evolve the painting. It's a wonderful way to paint. It really is. It's very relaxing, very easy, and I can change that quite easy. But I'm working in tones that are very close together. That's the key. Okay. Now in the roses and everything else, as I paint those, I'll show you half tones. You know, in some of those quick painting techniques that I showed in the 30-day challenge, I showed you, you know, shear techniques, halftone techniques, water blending, that kind of stuff, you know, solvent blending. And you can do that same type of thing, you know, onto these. But let's come out here and let's start to set in a rose here of how we may want to paint the rose. Now I'm going to take the rose right back out, further out into my background here a bit. Okay, so with the rose has the three parts of the rose. We'll take a little burnt sienna and some burnt sienna and a little bit of red violet here. And I have just a touch of that blue that's just showing up that I hit the edge of that. And I'm just going to let that happen. We can share that around. Remember, what is it that makes a rose? What is it that really makes a rose? It's the three circles, right? It's the three circles. So what I have to do is start to establish the three circles that are going to go right into here, which will also help suggest the light and dark of the rose. So here's going to be the three circles of the rose. And while I put that on there, I just wipe my brush with the paper towel. I'll pick up a little yellow oxide here. I'll pull that right across. I can soften that into that rose there. I can take a little bit more yellow, Hansa yellow. You add a bit of white, you start making this stuff more opaque. And we'll make a soft light here, soft yellow light to the front of that rose there, like that. We'll bring that out just a bit. You can start to see the shape of the rose coming there just a bit. Let's take a little yellow oxide, maybe a touch of the reds and stuff into that. Soften back into the back side of the rose here. I step way back on my brush now, and so that I can get some nice casual strokes. But I'm following basically the structures that we did before. Pull down, find that shape of that rose there a bit. Okay, we can lighten up. I can take a mottled stroke here of the light, the Hansa, and the white. This is a nice, powerful stroke. Don't keep your hand way back on your brush so that your tip stays nice and light, and just put on the edge of the rose like that. Okay, and you can build up more of the bowl coming down that way if you want, just like that. So you can see the rose start to come forward here like that, see? And we can build that a little bit more. You can follow your reaching type petals out here. There's all kinds of ways to paint roses here. So I can do more of the petal effects like I like to do. You can do more of the individual strokes or something like that Couchois likes to do. You know, you can find your own way. There's lots of ways. I'm going to put a little more light here, pulling out slightly. As I come down to the bottom here, I have to cool the color a bit, darken the color a bit as it heads to that shadow. That's right back there. Okay. So you can see me building up the rose, the volume of the rose here. And I'm in complete control of that rose. Now, I can use negative painting to send it back, but that just sends a little bit of an idea about what that rose is going to look like. Let's take some light here, and let's put it on the front of this one. And I'll put some extender. Sometimes it's my bucket of water's way over there. Sometimes I add the extender, but I don't add extender to blend because I'm not a blender anymore. I used to. Let me put it that way. You'll watch a lot of older videos where I did that a lot. But now I just add it because I love the way it makes the paint slippery. And I'll add a little bit of light into this one. We'll probably set this one right up in front of that one right there. But let's give it a shadow side, a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of our violets, cool shadow side. Because past here, it's heading down into the shadows. Take a bit of that shadow around. Painting here. And now see, this tone that I'm putting on here right now is way dark of that other one there. And that's immediately where you would say, oh, I'm an oil painter, I got to blend those together. In acrylics, you go, okay, that's dried, I can't blend it together. You don't blend it together. You don't need to blend it together. So how do you go about fixing that? You're a tone painter. You're not a blender. So you're a tone painter. Now, a couple of ways. One is I can take some water, like I showed you, and just go right over it, and that'll soften it out. But I don't always like that, because I like to paint in tones. So I'd say, okay, this is Hansen white, that's my dark. Really a medium tone. So here is my light, here's my dark. Really a medium tone is maybe yellow oxide with just a little bit of that violet in it right there. And I'll push that right onto the side like that. Now look how that starts to soften it out. I'll head just slightly more to the red to push in a little softness right there. Wipe my brush, head this slightly more to the light here, and push that in right there. And now with just a couple of strokes of tone, I've softened that whole thing out. That's what I do. I don't go in there and blend and blend and blend and blend and blend. Because what will happen is your whole rose becomes one color. That's what happened to me when I was an oil artist. I'd put something on and it'd all become one color because I'd work it and work it and work it and it all becomes one. As I started painting tones, I don't do that anymore. See? But it does take a while to shift your thought from wet painting to dry painting in tones. Let's go ahead and reset the center here. That center of that rose coming out that way. A little bit more of the bowl there. Let's just reset a couple of our centers here. Okay, reset a couple of those back through here. That's kind of nice. Right in there. I like that color. I'm going to push a little bit into this one. Now, see, you go, okay, you have that in there. How do you soften that out? I'm going to go right up towards my yellow oxide, tap that into the brush a little bit, and just pull right down through that. And leave those marks, leave those strokes. Don't blend that out, okay? Don't blend that out, okay? So get rid of some of that in there. So I set in some of that nice color in there. Let's set in some cooler greens. A little bit of pine green, a little bit of red violet into that, or not red violet, quinacridone violet into that. Let's break up some of this with some greens here now. And we'll break up some of the blues with some of our greens. Here, I'm constantly looking for tones. I'm painting tones. So I want a little green in here. Sometimes a little green with a little burnt sienna warms it just a bit. As I come up here towards the light warm side, I'll push some of that in. I'm going to take down the size of that rose just a bit there. Okay. Get rid of some of those light holidays in there. The light board of the background, what we call the holiday of it. There, like that. Maybe use this to help my ellipse up here too. Get that little bit more of an ellipse right in there on that container. It's a bit much, but we'll work that. So I'll put in some greens, but I do like to, you know, have some of that green and violet and blue in there too. So sometimes I just come back and I'll hit a little bit of that. It's hard for the camera maybe to pick up some of that difference, but that really makes, that's what we really tell the artists when they get a lot of those individual little tone strokes like that coming in. That's what it really starts to shine. Let's take a bit of yellow oxide, tone this right on down here. Push that right into that side. Look at that nice shadow side there. That rose can sit way back there into the shadow. Really nice down there now. With what you have, and we'll take a bit of our violet, maybe a touch of green, and let's push this down just a bit like that. Coming on that side. Well, that'll be fine. Okay, I'm going to rinse that out. And a lot of times I don't rinse my brush, but for today, for letting you see some of the tones and stuff, this is what I'll do. Now, this container here is all dry. And so if I want to come in and work on that container again, which is what I'm going to do now, I go right back in and I'll add some more to the container. So this is how I like to work around the composition. Work through the background, work through the container, work through the roses, come back down through it again. Now, you know, you want to come in here and you want to work some of your colors. The very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come right up here with some white. And I'm going to see what white looks like right there on the container. That's what I really want that highlight to be, right there on that container. Move that out a bit there like that. That's where I really want that highlight, up there like that. And then I'll work some of the other colors. Now, as I go work the other colors, you can put a little bit of extender in what you have. You have some of your colors that are here that are dry. Now, what I've done to some of my students is I say, go ahead and take this back off so you don't get influenced by that color. Otherwise, you're always using the same colors. But if I take some of this off here like this, I just scrape it off. Let's just take that right back off. So we're not using that anymore. Let's go in and let's make some more colors. And this time when we paint it, we'll let it be slightly different. We'll take some blue, a little green, a little burnt sienna, sometimes a little red. Why not a little red? Make yourself a beautiful kind of a gray tone. It doesn't have to be exactly the same tone, but this kind of grayish type of tone here. See, that's a pretty little tone. And I'll just drag that over that side there. Always when you're looking, look at it compared to my value scale up here. I'm right about an 8 or so. And I don't want to use that everywhere because I don't want to lose my blues. But you can see that other tone going in there now, and that's kind of pretty. Let's just raise that up just a bit there. That's kind of pretty. So what I concentrate on right now in the first part, even if my ellipse comes off a little bit or something comes off a little bit, I don't worry about it. What I'm looking at is my broken color. This is what we call the broken color of the container. So look at that pretty little color as it relates right there into that blue and those colors coming through together. Okay. And I made that because I didn't use the same position of colors on my palette. I cleaned it off and I made something different. When I was an oil artist, that was really hard to do because everything, I touch this color into here, and if I touch it too much, it blends. And that tone is gone. Now, it's very easy to do that. I'm a tone painter. Because it's dry. I'm setting what I'm doing now on top of something that's already dry, so it's very hard to eliminate it. Let's put a slightly different little violet tone, and let's travel that violet tone as well. That's a good thing to do. Here, push some of that into some of your other flowers. See how that carries that around. You know, this is what the way in which a lot of the Victorian impressionistic painters painted. They traveled their colors, and it's great. It's a lot of fun. We'll push some of that around, push some of that tone around there. That's kind of nice right in there. That's getting a nice kind of container there. Now in the overall lighting, there would be a bit more of a shadow. Let's see if we can express that slightly different here. Slightly different kind of burnt sienna and green and a little bit of blue. shadow, and I want this to pick up some of the tone that I'm using back through here. So let's restate some of this shadow, a little different color right in there. Let's blue it up just a bit. This is going to be nice. Watch this. So I'm looking at these two tones, and let's work this right there, right into that. Different brush strokes. Think about light bouncing around and hitting different sides of it and stuff like that. Look at the different color we just got into that container. Isn't that kind of pretty? We'll put a darker line of that there. Right in there like that. Let's take a lighter grade version of that right up onto this side. Maybe. Helps the roundness of our container there. It's kind of a pretty little color that goes in there. But as you're painting this, you know, this is a nice thing that I love about acrylics is I'll start to, let's take a blue, a little bit lighter blue, maybe a bit more of a blue violet here. And let's just state that right across this way as well. This is one thing that I like to do in containers is I'll take contrast strokes across the other side here as light works across the other side. And so now I got a play of those, which I like. Let's get this a little lighter, warmer, a little bit, and take just a bit of that out. So I like to play those tones. Now you can use your finger to soften it, but see, I like this type of brush calligraphy that's on there. Now if you don't, you just take a damp brush and you work it right out. You could take that right out. But I love that type of calligraphy that comes from that. Let's take a little bit of that blue, just express a little bit of it there. But see, and this is what makes beautiful containers, and you'll see that in artist paintings, and you go look at the masters and stuff, and it looks like they've painted them 100 times with all these little strokes of colors. They have. This is how they do it, you know. They have. Well, you look at this whole painting, we're just about an hour, less than an hour into the whole painting because I had the drawing time and everything into it. So an hour just setting it all up here like that goes pretty quick. Let's, yeah, that's kind of a fun color. Let's light and warm that just a bit more here. And put another stroke or two of that tone down here. That is kind of pretty down that side. I'll take all of that out. Let a little more of that blue. There, see how it's just, I just changed the tone on my palette just a bit. There, build that up just a bit more. Yeah, all kinds. And don't forget to, you know, you need to start restating some of your yellows and stuff like that that you might have, you know, hitting here onto your container as well, you know, that are going to come from roses and stuff like that through there. Okay, so, yeah, let's reset our, make it a little bit curved to match that ellipse now. There. Take some of that out. That's how I like to set it in and then take little bits of it out. Gives you a little bit better shine. And I love texture. I love textures in those. And drag just a bit of that down the front of that container there. But see, I'm painting tones pretty close together so that they don't need to be blended here. And I'm letting the dragging of it just kind of go across there. And I want to give a little bit more of a fractured edge here. So I want this to be broken all along this edge. Kind of like that, lose the edge just a bit here. Lose the edge of that container just a bit. And I am starting to round this down, so I probably will round that down. Ooh, I kind of like that. A little bit of light reflection stroke right there. That's kind of pretty. See, it gives a little bit of light right there. Let's do it a little bit lighter. See what happens. Yeah, that's kind of a pretty light hit. And you can do a setup and see what happens, but you know, here I'm not painting from a setup here. I have some photos off to the side on the monitor there that show some different vases and some different flowers and stuff like that. That's how I like to do it. I kind of build my own kind of composition here as I'm going. Okay, so that worked out pretty well. Let's put a little bit lighter, warmer up here into the front. A little more yellow and light and warmth up there. Let's get a little more bold with that. Right up in here, it's gotta match that path of light, so that's got to come in right in there. A little bit more light right in there. That's going good. That'll get that light in there. Get that light in there. Okay, let's now anything that you need to correct. Now I really want to keep this lost edges, but anything you need to correct, you can always take some of your darks, your shadowy tones, blue, greens and blues, some of those browns and stuff that you have here, burnt siennas here. Let's get a little more burnt sienna here, darks, and but I really want to kind of keep this broken down that side. In other words, drag that into that shadow there just a bit so that the edge, you lose that edge. And it's called the lost edge. So we lose that edge just a bit here. Here we'll lose that just a bit. Here, the break it up a bit. You have a nice contact shadow. Contact shadow is one of your darkest shadows. That's right where the container is touching the table there. That's one of the darkest shadows of your painting. A lot of people think, oh, you get away from the light, it gets darker. No, what actually creates the shadow? The light. So the closer you go to the light, the darker the shadow goes. That's how I started to remember it. And we'll push that in just a bit. Let's just round this right into that. Lose that edge just a bit there. Lose that edge of that container there for that. And I like all that brokenness of it. Okay, let's go back up to our roses for a second. Let's go work through those again. Put some more yellow. Love to get that yellow into there, right following right along the brightness where my light is. That's kind of nice. Let's restate a little bit of our violets. I'm not worried about making the same tones again. Matter of fact, I want something a little different. There's some of that nice red. Carry that around your composition a bit. There. Some of that nice red violet and quinacridone violet is pretty colors there. Let's get a bit of our nice light yellow and white here. Restate that front, build that front of that rose up there. Here. Push that around. Now those, if you painted that, the 30-day challenge, you see I use my fingers a lot when I go to paint some of these types of roses. Sometimes not, but I want to add some Darulite in there to change this up a bit too. I love that Darulite, kind of a yellow-orange. And see, it works really wonderfully, especially around your center of interest. Just kind of hue shifts your yellow a bit, and that just works magic. Here, let's get a little bit lighter here. A few little touches of that around. Go and get a little bit more of an edge here. Pull that one in, a bit more of an edge right there. We can go a little bit lighter of an edge. Sometimes I will pull out to leave that edge a little fractured at the end. Pull in and out. Try changing a little bit different way you do stuff. Here. And it's a little different painting them with the long brush on the easel than it is painting them down like we did in the challenge. And it's a different look, a different feel. And you can do smaller. This is where the masters would do smaller, what they call color marks instead of strokes. And So I'll start to build the front of the rose just like we did before. The front of the rose up here. Kind of pull that around a bit like that. And maybe a little chisel mark for another petal right there. Okay. And I can use burnt sienna, yellow oxide, a little bit of quinacridone there to paint back out, take out any of those little marks. See, I like that type of look. It's a very casual, beautiful look. So I do a lot of what I call negative painting, painting out, especially when I do it on the easel like this. It makes everything a little bit different. That's what I like. And I like to, leave those kind of little marks like you see there. I always call those Pettit marks. Eugene Pettit did that. Push that around there, okay. And build it lighter, more texture, more edges here. It's up to you. It's your rose, how you want to do it. If I want to put a petal in there, then I can just come in with a little bit of a shadow stroke and just toss in a little shadow, and I'll make it look like 2 petals in there now. All kinds of ways to do it. But I'm constantly brush mixing and changing, changing up trying to slowly build more and more and more texture. That's my goal in this type of flower. Let's darken it down, a little bit of yellow oxide as I come around here to the back of the flower. Here. Push some of that in. Let those edges fracture a bit. Just a few little edges on there. Let it fracture a bit. In other words, broken. Break up the edges here. Let's push in a bit of the roundness of the bowl. Soften that in. There, like that. Okay. And then you can put in little chisel marks for other little petals like that. Coming back down and in. However you want to do it. Sometimes I'll take that and maybe a little burnt sienna here and lift back out. Or push and shear that so I get just a bit of the movement. I think a little mark right out here. A little edge of a petal. That'd be kind of pretty. I could build the front of that rose up a bit more. That's getting, sometimes you don't know how much you're going to be doing your rose. It's a little early, really, still in the painting to paint this rose this much, but sometimes I just get into it and I got to do it. And but it's usually best to work around the composition, slowly building it around the composition before you get too far into that center of this, or to the queen here, getting this queen too far painted. But it is kind of fun. And you can always negative paint out. Take a little bit of dark and just tap through. Negative paint out. I probably will want to take a bit of my violet, burnt sienna, maybe a bit of yellow oxide here, and restake just a bit of that bowl shadow right in there. See how that, remember what I always said into the other, even though we painted it with different brushes and stuff, never lose that bowl. Well, that applies to here as well. Never lose that bowl. You lose that bowl, you lose the shape of that rose. And so try to always keep and preserve that bowl as much as possible. There. And so usually when I'm painting with this, I'll start to do it with more smaller little marks of color. Here like that. See that bowl, that just added so much depth to that rose right there. Let's do a more simplistic one right here. A little bit of light here. Make a light petal here coming back up over this one just a bit. Nice texture. So that comes up on front there. Don't lose the bowl. Take a little bit of your bowl shadow up and around there. Let's take a little violet, a little burnt sienna, and reset that center. Remember, always keep that center. It's that bowl in that center that makes the beautiful little rose. See? Let's take some, since we're heading down into the shadow, we'll try to work with more yellow oxide as you get down over here. That keeps the light diminishing down. Let's go just a bit of light right up here though, because that's the light side. Right up there. Right like that. Okay. But yellow oxide, a little bit of Hansa, a little bit of white. Build up the front of this just a bit more. Maybe a bit lighter, right up where you want that light, that path of light to be going through your painting here. Push that in. Maybe push. Now I'm working with a number 10 flat. You can switch off between flats, but I try to paint with as big a brush as possible. You know, I'll push in like that and pick up this textured edge, and maybe just like we did in the challenge, draw a little chisel there to set the idea of a chisel petal. Now, that tone's a little close. It could be a little bit lighter, so I might take a bit more textured light. That's better. Push that edge right there. Let's tone down just a bit and push this in, coming over the edge of that container there maybe, and a bit of the light here. I like to overlap things. And blur that edge like that. I like that kind of look. Maybe a bit more of a textured, heavier light right in here of a petal that helps round that rose, but it also puts it right up in front. Let's put just a bit of that heavy texture, small, right in there. And probably a little half tone. It's a little quick change right there, so I'll come and make a little half tone right there. And let's go to the reds here. Push that in right there, and see, I don't blend, but see how that rounds. And I'll take a look at that. We'll look at that camera. You're looking at me back, and you'll see, yeah, that sets that whole bit back further. See, and that's basically how I paint those. So I'll do one tone, darken it, put another mark on, darken it, put another mark or stroke on that way. See, and that works. Let's go back. Burnt sienna, red violet. Push some of that right back into this one. And that's real dark, so then I'll take some yellow oxide, push right into it. There's some yellow oxide. See, I like that kind of working of that. And if you work with a lot of texture, and if you work real fast your shapes, you'll get a whole different look to your flowers. And I'm going to have to squirt out some more yellow oxide here. We'll make sure that we're going to establish the path of light onto this one. Let's work this around a bit. There's a nice pretty little rose shape, and I've got to get out a little more yellow oxide here because I'm running out. We can't have that yet. So grab some of that with some of our light, maybe just a touch of Hansa. That Hansa just boosts up the intensity a bit. And we'll push a bit of that light coming right around there like that. Let's pick up a little edge of that so I can put a little textured edge to that petal that's right there. And maybe another little edge to a petal that's like there. And I'll pull up some burnt sienna and some red right from here to make sure you do see that nice shadow there. But now you got that nice light coming through like that, see? It's pretty. It's a little different. It's pretty. Let's take our yellow oxide, a little bit of white, and let's put this right up on front of that right there. The light would hit right there. Push that in. Restate some of this nice shadow right in here like that. That's kind of pretty coming that side. Maybe a little darker red violet and right down inside there. Now if that's too bright, you put a little green in it and that tones that red violet right on down. That's kind of okay. And I'll just use some of that red right into this nice softer little light here. Just kind of tap that around to the rose shape there, like that. And now if you have to keep lightening it up to make it show up and it starts to compete with that one, then you don't have your shadows dark enough. What makes a color look lighter? It's darker shadow. So you don't want to lighten this up. We want to put some light in it, especially on this side right over here, so it fits our path of light going through. It's just hitting right there. Okay, our path of light is hitting right there, right on the edges here of these guys. And then it's diminishing down here. Maybe put a little chisel edge of one right there. Then it's diminishing down here. There we go. Just like that. So, you know, we're going to want to definitely see our light through. Now I may lighten up these just a bit more to help that path of light. But now as we go further back, we've got to get yellow oxide and burnt sienna in here. Maybe even a touch of green to help tone that down a bit more. And that's got a gray. See how that one's nice and grayed back there. We'll set that one in kind of grayed. And we'll use our red violet and a little bit of green and burnt sienna is for that center. So it's more grayed as well. See how grayed that color is compared to the red right up in front there. See? That's what gives you your beautiful depth to your paintings. Let that grayness pull through there like that. It's nice. We might take a little bit of that soft gray. I do like to travel color. Take a little bit of that soft gray through there. And soft gray, a little bit lighter so you hit that path of light here, but not too much goes on this guy back here. Not too much, because he's way in the back here. What really makes the rose, what is it? It's the bowl and the shadow of the bowl and that center. Greens. So don't lose the shadow of that bowl there. And let's darken down that center just a bit more. That makes a nice rose. Sits back there a little softer. Back in the back. And let's take some of our softer yellows. Push into this one. Let the edges stay more fractured and broken back here. Okay, let's take a little bit of that softer reds. Push in that shadow right in there. See that go back. And then we'll lighten this just a bit. But you see, I'm painting the tones, and as I'm painting, as if I slowly build these tones up. That is how I do it. I build the tone up, build the tone up, build the tone up. So I work slowly up and I work slowly down. Or if I separate them too much, I put a half tone on to soften right in between. But you're painting this whole thing. Now see, that all looks like an oil painting all in there, and it's not. But I'm not thinking at any time blending. I'm thinking I need to make the right tone. That's how I do it. This is how acrylic artists can do beautiful things. It looks just like oils. We have to shift our thinking from blending because we're not blenders. We have to shift our thinking from blending to tone painting. The painting within a tone. Now see, I just lighten this up a little bit, and you don't need to have that much stuff, see? It does not take a whole bunch of blending to make that. Let's take that soft color, push that into the edge there. It's kind of nice, maybe just a touch more of a red violet right into that very deep center. It's kind of nice to have a little bit of that contrast. That's up to you. How much you put in is up to you, you know. And just dipped a little water to loosen some of this up, so keep this all very understated. As if I'm painting any rose over here onto this side, I just paint the impression of its shape and stuff. Doesn't need a whole bunch over there. Just the impression of it here. Maybe a little bit for the light, and we'll be able to darken that down a little. And if you want to tone it, it's a little bit of pine green into that red, tones that, or a little bit of burnt sienna into with the pine green as well. But that just kind of grays that down, pushes it right there onto that shadow side of that. Now I might, I will change some of that up a bit, but that'll get there. Now I'm going to take off some of this so I don't get influenced by it. And I know the main mixtures of my, my container there is burnt sienna and the blues and the violets here. And I'll start some slightly different again here. I'll do a little bit more cleanup, a little bit more here, fix this ellipse a bit, slightly different color, and see how pretty that is. That puts in just a little different color there, like that. And you can, like I said, I just added a bit of extender just to get the color moving, because I'm not blending. Just to get I like the slipperiness of that color going over the edge there. I like that. I like that little light blue kind of appearing down that side. That's kind of nice. Might change that up a bit, a little bit more light, a little violet. There, like that. That's not too bad. And let's get a little bit more light into that container. And I'll probably cover this all up anyway, but it's if you're not sure, you do it. Put up the little edge up there, and I should probably put in the little edge for the idea of that broken line there that we had on the sketch. Change that just a bit there. And this is where I really like the alla prima of it, just breaking up some of that. Leave the idea of the edge and then just break up the colors with some other colors, other tones. Now you don't want to make like a rainbow, but I'll put on these other tones here. That's a little too light mixed into that. Yeah, I like that. That works. Down like that. See that? Part of that. Now let's lighten up down the container again. And you see, sometimes you kind of follow the color flow that you like. Kind of like that going down. Sometimes I really like to, like I said, like to swirl it around like that to give a different type of light movement want to be careful not to destroy everything I did already. Put a little bit of violet into that. There. That kind of, I like that, sometimes that swirl motion of the colors. Try the different tones. There, swirling around that light a bit. Let's go swirl that light down a bit. So instead of, putting on colors and blending, I'm watching the tones. Each time I apply it here, I'm watching the tone coming on and making sure it's what I want to have. Let's get that extra little light there on that edge. Makes kind of a pretty one. And you can leave it really mottled. You can smooth it out a bit if you want. It's all up to you. There's all kinds of ways, and I've showed you all different kinds of ways to paint containers. But there's all kinds of ways I paint containers. Let's put a little, restate some of this dark over here. Move that right through. And instead of blending it, I'll take some light color like this and go right over that. Just drag it over it. I don't want to do it too many times, so I don't want to blend it. I just want that to sink into there so I get some different type of movement here. Like that. It's kind of nice. But I like painting these several times, evolving it. That's what I really always say, I evolve it, evolve the tone. Don't want to lose all that burnt sienna. I really like that one too. Put a little more burnt sienna in there. Kind of like that one coming through. And if you're painting like a Mortimer's or something, sometimes he goes real light to dark real quick on his containers, and so you get a lot of contrast through them. Or you can leave it a little softer. It's yours. It's yours. Okay, so now I'm going to break up that light just a bit and reset it. I like the fracturing of colors around the light source. Different little tones and stuff around the light source, the movement around the light source makes it more shimmery. So I'll do it like several times and really kind of take some nice texture and push that on into a bit for that nice light. Maybe little fractures of it along the line. There. Bit right down here. There, like that. That's pretty good. So that works. Let's put in a bit of work, just a little bit, because I want to do the back. Really, I want to do the table before I get too far into these roses here. We'll make this one coming at us just a bit. And let's take some yellows, build up the, let's see, we were going to turn this one up, so I got to get that up higher here. Let's turn this up just a bit more. This one could be a little bit more contrast because it's right up here by the front where we want that contrast to come up there. Now, that had just a bit of blue in there, and that's probably a touch too much, too purpley. That's better. So we want that to turn up. Then we want some yellow oxide, some Hansa yellow. Brighten it up a bit. Push that, let that just diminish down. You can see you can get that real oil look by just doing it wet in the wet like that real fast. You know, and sometimes I'll do that, I'll leave that. But you really got to have confidence with your roses to do that well. And that takes a bit of time, a little bit of practice. Let's put some more light here. We'll express that light. Now, that's getting really wet. When it gets really wet there, boy, it's just like oils. I mean, it gets really hard to paint, to lighten something up, because I put light in there like that, and it just disappears. So that's usually where I will stop and let it dry up a bit. And then it's a lot easier to paint. That's why I like the acrylics. So I don't have to worry about that all becoming one color, and so, you know, it's a little different. Okay, so let's go back now and let's work our background. Let's take some of this, work our background a bit more in our foreground. Nice light. This is a nice light, a little bit warm light we can take right back in through here. I don't want to make that too smooth. Now see, if I liquefy the paint too much, boy, it really makes it smooth fast. So I don't want to do that too much here. So I want to vary the tone a bit here. We'll work that through. Work that color. See, I love the pretty colors of it now coming through. A little bit lighter maybe. That through light, since I lightened that up there a bit, we can lighten that through light coming down through here. Leave the calligraphy of your brush. That's when it's pretty. You know, move your brush and scumble a bit. Leave the calligraphy. Go over the edge of this rose so that you get that lost edge a bit there as it's heading to the back there. Okay, that's kind of pretty. Let's take some of that right up here to the front. Scrub that in, right in there. Okay, and get this a little lighter and warmer up, really up into the front. Love that texture, love this movement. Fracture that edge of that cast or contact shadow there. Break that up. Broke that up a bit. There, you see, you're building the depth and volume of your painting again, right? Building that up. Build that volume. Get that paint. Get that nice, thick. That's what all of the masters always said in there. Get that thick paint going and flowing right in there. Get that nice expressed path of light. Hit it really thick right in there. That path of light, and break it off. So they see that path of light right there. And we'll go back up to the top up there. Let's work that. A little burnt sienna, a little blue here. Vary it, maybe a touch of green and yellow. Make the color a little different, but it is a bit darker than what is on the light, the through light. So that could go a little bit darker. Remember, your acrylics should also dry a little darker. But you see, I'm working this, and see, I worked these colors together in these layers, and where it was originally rough, now look how it looks blended. And I haven't blended it. I've just worked another layer up on top of it. Those of you that have painted the Dutch Masters with me, this is how we do the Dutch Masters. We work layer upon layer upon layer of color, and as you work them, they all of a sudden start to optically blend together even more and more and more. And still while preserving that interest of your painting, see? And We'll come down here, change the tone just a bit. Come down. Let's pick up just a bit, and I'll just go ahead and change. Pick up a bit of green with that violet. Carry that right on out here. At the same time, make some lost edges of leaves and stuff here. Some of those greens in there. Those pretty colors in there like that. Let's get back over to a little bit more burnt sienna and blue into it. Change it. See, I'm constantly changing the tone. So what I did now is just a little bit. It follows the same thing. My path of light going through here. I'm following that same thing, but you know, I'm using slightly different hues, different tones, so that my painting is evolving and changing. So, you know, it's like, okay, what color to use in there? Wow, there's so many over there that I used. It's kind of hard to find exactly which one. And that's what I like to do, because your eye just travels through all of those colors. It's really pretty here. Picks up those. I like that green burnt sienna look with that blue. It's kind of pretty. We'll lighten that just a bit here. Get along that horizon line there, but kind of blur that horizon line just a bit there so it's not perfect. That table line, excuse me, call it the horizon line. That table line. We'll kind of blur that. You know, you might even take some green and blues here. Just draw some of that out and across. That's what Mortimer's would do. He would break up his lines quite a bit. That's a little warm back there, Dave. Don't be doing that. Let's cool that with a little blue, little violet. And that'll be a better color. Push a little bit of that color right over here to the other side. There we go. Now let's just get back, lighten that just a bit. Let this start to come forward, warmer here. Just work that. And if you like working into the wet, you could just add extender, or those of you that have painted along with me and seen how I do the global color technique, you could do that. But, you know, I like this dry, coming up over it with the dry. You see, this is all dry back here. And I can take a little extender just to thin it out. You can use water and just drop that and scumble that right over that. And that all looks kind of blended out. Then I'll reset my lights, my nice light warm colors, because this is up towards my light. And I'll start resetting my lights again. And I do this several times. But see, each time I do it, just makes it prettier and prettier as you get that color depth in there. And I watch how the color moves back here, soften it out just a bit so it moves back. Leave some of that brush marks in there. That's kind of nice, you know. And so you can see again, so what, this is like the third time now we've gone around through the painting. Look at it there on the monitor there with me. That's, so I have a monitor right there. Look at that and go, yeah, that's coming along. You know, and I don't want to do this really, really bright blue now. You know, I mean, Mortimer's would do that. He'd come in really bright blue. I don't really want to do that too bright a blue, because then you know, I'd have to worry about carrying that color. It really identifies it. But with it broken up like that, that's not so bad. Not so bad. I'm going to reset. I hit that when I was putting the table line on there. I kind of hit the bottom there just a bit. So I just want to reset that ellipse down here just a touch more. A little bit better. There, like that. That's not too bad. I could put a little bit of light. See, I like painting like that. That's just a totally different color. and just watch that color movement and what happens to that over there. That's a pretty color. That might be great to drag around like that on that broken edge there of that one. Maybe put a mark of it right up there. It's kind of nice. Yeah, different, you know. With this, when I do the leaves, when I do some of this stuff, you can put some of that blue right up through here like this. This is what Couchoir would do. Just kind of push marks of that blue. Look at how that, and see how that blue travels up and through. What you always look, you don't want to isolate a color. So, you know, just put a few little marks of that, especially maybe over here on the cool side. That would be really kind of proper to put some of that over here onto the cool side to really get a prettiness to it. Okay, let's go. So is this, yeah, that's dried pretty much, so I can go now. See, when it's dry, I can go up onto that. Let's take a little yellow, a little light, a little white here. I can go right up onto that and set in my lightness that I want to have. Now, I'm going to look for a lightness like right about in here, so your eye pulls up there. So it could go a little bit lighter. Maybe a touch of that Hansa into that here. And we'll just pull that lightness right there. Pull that down here. And I've got a little stiff on that center there, so I'm just going to take some yellow, push around, show you how to lighten up a rose again after a mistake. So push it down. Let's put a little more light right out here to say that's the light direction of it. Okay, maybe a little chisel of light here. A little chisel of light. That's a little pointed. Little pointed there. Now, what is it that makes the rose? It's the centers and the bowl shadows, right? So I'll come in here and then just reset my center on this rose, right like that. Reset its bowl shadow here. Pull that out and around, and that makes a better looking rose sitting down there, see? And I want to leave it somewhat broken like this. I don't want to get too defined there because I'm out of my center of interest, and I don't want to. The more I do on this rose, the more it pulls your eye down there to it, and I want it to be mostly just a suggestion, just like this one. I want it to be a suggestion of the rose here. Just drop that down, take a little bit of our yellow here, and just kind of tap in the shape of the rose. You're not really doing, you know, perfect roses by any matter of means here. Just the suggestion, the shape here. Whoa, that's a little dark. Get into some yellow oxide. There we go. Just like that. And I might put the light front, might lighten up the front petals here because they would be towards that light source there. Right like that, just a bit of the light, maybe a touch lighter here because they would be a little bit lighter. Here, a little bit of our shadow there. That's a nice little, kind of a nice little shape. Maybe a soft bowl shadow here. Yeah, let's build this. Sometimes you have a rose that you just got to work a little bit. Don't want to do too much more than that. That's kind of maybe just I always like to make sure I express that light source, so we really want to express that light source there. There like that. That's just kind of pointing to up towards this. Let's put a bigger stroke of some Hansa white. More texture right up there. We're going to kind of track our light source here before we go paint a few leaves. There like that. So you really see that light. We can put just an edge of it, maybe tone that down with a bit of yellow oxide, but it's still a little bit lighter. Let's put just a, watch your light. So your light's moving through, so this one's a little further back, so we want to make sure it's a little darker, but it's moving back. And then let's get more yellow oxide, maybe, and just the tiniest little bit. And we'll put just a little light right here to the front of this one coming through. So you see that light diminishing back. That's what you want. That's that passive light. There we go. Don't really need too much up into that other one. Maybe touch softer. Right there, just to help say that roundness there of that rose. That one's sitting, but it's mostly in shadow. Now let's come on and put some of our leaves. These kind of fill up. I like the pine green, yellow oxide. We'll keep these. We'll maybe put some blue onto some of these as well. You know, as we kind of fill these in here. Some of this I'm just going to put in some color here, and you know, and then the others I will put more of a leaf shape. So first we'll put those on. Then let's just drop down right across the front here and put our first big leaf shape. That'll cover that ellipse just a bit. And kind of like doing things like that. Now, you know, Mortemans would leave it quite open and put in some stems and some stuff. I'm going to close it down just a bit, just some movement here. Here. And, you know, even some of the blue, taking it slightly to the blue side here would be pretty, because it'll pick up those blues. Blue-green side here. And that blue-green will pick up that. So different, you know, different types of ovals and stuff like that for your leaves here. Okay. Change the color, a little blue, put in a little burnt sienna. Always change that tone just a bit. Just put in a little bit of color. I like that blue burnt sienna on a little light. It's a pretty color. But we'll constantly mix the different tones. You know, that's how I like to do it. Come out and we'll put a secondary tone. Sometimes I use just one tone. Sometimes I put a secondary tone. If I have a larger composition, I'll put secondary tones on. In other words, a secondary highlight or a shadow. So I might just use this tone that I did here. Kind of like put the lower section there of that leaf in with that, and then we'll put the light onto it. Different ways. Let's get a little more lighter green. Maybe put one right down there. Hits that. Let's go a little more blue, burnt sienna into some of this green back here onto this side. Here. Darker. Get a little brush dance going there, a little bit of stuff there. Let's get some lighter yellow-green. Here, like that. Hit that maybe a bit more. A little bit of yellow oxide in there. It's kind of pretty. Here, just break that up a bit. Sometimes I'll put a little idea of the vein line going down. There. Just you know, two-tone. Usually two-tone. I don't. And a lot of times, you know, when I do simplistic leaves, simplistic flowers, like the 30-day, you know, challenge I did just one-tone leaves, and sometimes I'll put a second tone onto it, or even a third tone, but not very often. I leave my leaves. I like the flowers to overpower the leaves quite a bit, but you can work that a little bit more on that center of interest leaf, so it gets a bit more detail to it. You know, that's not too bad of a thing to do, to really kind of bring that up a bit more. Keep that nice soft kind of grayness to it. I like that. A little bit of green. Tap the colors around, build it up, tap the colors around there. And let's, I'm just going to take some of that heavy color out of my brush. Let's go back, blue-green, a little bit of burnt sienna to tone it down, and push in some of the stem lines there. Maybe some idea of leaves here. And you can change them up, make them more yellow-green, lighter. Here up into the very front. Just play, you know, these, just get kind of playful with them. Just put them in. There. You can really assist the look here by putting in a cast shadow from your rose here as well. Kind of blur that line there. So we'll cast that shadow off on this side and cast the shadow there on the rose or any leaves or anything back in here. Just real quick. I'm going to rinse that out. That water container's right next to that microphone, so I know that sounded really well for you. You got the real feeling of that. I noticed that as I started to filming. I said, oh, I put my water container right next to the mic. Yeah. Soften that just a bit out there. But, yeah, that's not too bad there. Let's rework. Nice heavy lights. This is really where sometimes I will, you know, and I thought, yes, I did. I brought it. I really like the scraper for doing, you know, I do it a lot, and we're going to be doing some landscapes here, landscape challenge and stuff. But I like the scraper for really applying a heavy texture to the fronts of stuff. And I like the way that it, you know, applies really casually the colors. And can really, because, you know, part of the things is we tend to get a little dark sometimes. And I mean, there's a lot of artists that like the dark. I don't care for the, I like a lot of light in going through my paintings here. But I'll take this scraper with some of this color here. We'll lighten this up. I like this greens and stuff like that coming through here. Now I can soften this all with my brush, but I like the casual way it draws it through, see, and leaves some of those marks. And really right up here, that nice light that comes up there in the painting. Now, I'm going to take my 3/4 inch brush, put a little extender right into it here, and just work through this, softening it out now where I want that. I'll leave some textures, I'll soften this out. It's really kind of a great technique. So I'll just draw that right back into the back there and leave that. Little extender, tap it on your palette. And now use the extender. Why extender, not water? You can use water, but boy, water cuts through it really quickly because water is its solvent. So I like to, if I'm going to soften something like this, I like to go grab that extender because that just really softens it quite nice. Now that needs to have a little more light over this way. That way, like that. That's kind of pretty. And see, I'll just soften that edge just a bit over there. I'll leave some of it. Just kind of go through. It's that kind of calligraphy and lines and textures that give a lot of interest to your painting. Look how it pulls, that light just pulls right up through the painting there. Now, I could go through, now that I have that nice and light like that, I can go through and say, hey, well, do I want to, lighten more things, like lighten up the container and stuff like that. That's stuff you can decide. Usually when I put that ground light in like that, I usually will go through my container and a few other little things. And let's try a little lighter blue here. Not quite that. Maybe a bit of burnt sienna into that. Let's try a little bit lighter into a few areas here. See if I like that. See, that's a kind of a greenish color coming down from the leaves. And that's kind of pretty. And take some of that over there, and then I won't try to blend that off. I'm going to make a darker tone here and soften it off, see? And maybe a bit of violet coming in on that other side, right there. That's how I like to paint. So I'll paint it light, and then I'll start to paint it down like that. And I'll start to cross these tones a little bit like that. Right through. I think you get some beautiful intermediate tones. If you don't blend too much, if you don't play around there too much, you get some beautiful intermediate tones. Let's hit that light right along that edge one more time there. Maybe a bit lighter. Right up there in the front. It's kind of pretty. There. Just like that. So you get all those beautiful little tones. And I lost some of that violet that I had on that side. That happens. I did like that, so I'm going to restate that just a bit. A little more violet. Maybe a bit lighter. Let's take a look at that. There we go. Maybe a bit lighter. Let's run right down that edge. Yeah, that's kind of pretty. Right through. Maybe give a touch more of the reflected light side of that container right up here. Just a bit of that violet pulling through. There. That's kind of pretty. So it's a different, really quite different look to it. Now, do you want to, if your Couchoir would lighten up, Mortimer's wouldn't lighten up. I think that's your own individual style. Do you want to lighten up some more? Punch that just a bit more. Gee, do you think I should? Yeah, it's kind of your choice. Do you want to punch up that container just a little bit lighter? Let's put just a touch more on it. And punch that up just a little bit more. Right down through there. Kind of curved a bit. So you saw me work some across, some curved. And the beautiful thing is, as you're doing that, you know, it'll give the vase so many different looks. Let's just punch. Yeah, I'm kind of liking that punched up just a bit more. So you see, I'm walking up my values. And so if you're an acrylic painter, you just have to make sure you don't go too far too fast where you require to blend. You know, I'm walking it up kind of slowly there. And I don't need to blend when I walk up like that, my values like that. Let's put a little bit of that violet on the side of that. There, like that. Maybe a bigger stroke. That light down there, kind of like the power of it. Kind of like I really like Sargent and his philosophy of the big brush and power of the stroke. So that's kind of pretty. That extra little bit of light going down there. And let's just pop that shine going down just a bit more there. All up to you, though. How much you gonna do? That's your call. You know, let's put it. You can put vertical or curved strokes. They all make it look a little different. I like to drag, get some of that scumbling. It's what's called dry brush scumbling when you get the light values. That's another thing that we do. Dry brush scumbling here. Way to express some of your highlights. And it's really easy to do it with acrylics. You know, it's a technique that the Dutch masters used a lot, but they'd have to wait for their paints to dry up a few days before they could do it. We can do it all within a few minutes, which is nice for the acrylics. Everybody paints different. That's the big thing. And you find what you like to do. I am an acrylic painter, and you can't tell me that doesn't look like oils. You know, that's the thing. This thing looks like, you know, looks like it's painted in oils and stuff. So, you know, you can do it for sure. For sure. Let's put just a little bit more traveling color here. And a little bit more. You know, I like those touches of blues and stuff coming back out. A little bit more of that helps carry that container color further out here. You know, that's works really well. And the question is, how much more, you know, do you want to lighten up your leaves? That's all up to you. You can, you know, I suggest you go on and look at, you know, Couchois and Mortemans and look at some of those. They're great. I have a lot of floral artists of the masters that I just like to take and emulate their oil paintings with acrylics, and you can do it, but you know, I can't make them exactly the same because we all have different touches to our brush. But they're a heck of a lot of fun to try. Move some of that color around. Let's lighten up that front color just a little bit more. You gotta, you know, your acrylics, that's the other thing, your acrylics dry a little darker, so you may have to hit them a couple of times where you think it's light enough, and then, no, that isn't quite light enough. Go back and do it one more time. And just put on another little stroke. Now, if I want to soften that in there, I have to come in with a half tone, something right in between, or just something slightly darker here. Let's just make it a little darker and put it right along that edge. See there? And that just softens that right out. And that's up to you, you know, how much you want to do. But that's how I do it, is I paint tones up and down. I'll paint half tones. You know, I am a tone painter. I'm not a blender. So I like painting the tones, mixing the tones, and painting the tones. Now, couple of things about your palette. You know, as you can see here, we're just a hair over 2 hours into the painting, you know, after the drawing. So we did a painting like this in 2 hours. That's not too bad. If you want to start saving your paints and stuff, you can. I save them all the time by covering them with saran wrap. You can use a mister bottle like this and just, you know, come over and mist your paints like that, and that'll mist really nice. And then you can cover the saran wrap. Or if you have it, you know, where you have any kind of like a Tupperware container or something, like, you just invert it and set it on top. Mist the inside of the Tupperware converter, set it on top. That'll do that. Or what I do with a lot of my paints, and if I have leftover paints, is I combine them all together, make this grayish color, add a little white to get the color I want, and I go prep boards and stuff like that I'm going to be doing in my next few paintings. So that's how I do it, and that's what a lot of masters used to do. Is they would, in leftover paint, they would just mix it all up and, you know, prepare for their next day painting and stuff. I might add just a little bit more light and stuff to those roses as it dries down. You know, I might see what it looks like and add a little bit more to them. But you know, overall, that's not a bad painting. The thing is, go grab yourself a nice frame, drop it into a frame, step back, take a look at it, see if you want. Another thing is you could do some small, light little blue flowers. Let me just show you something like that. And so if you feel like you need to carry that blue from that container just a little bit more, keep them toned, maybe more of a blue-gray, but you could do some little blue flowers like this up and around, just little ideas of them through the painting back here. And I would do it more of as an impression. You saw me do all kinds of little blue flowers in that challenge, but that would make real pretty little soft ones. Keep them kind of gray, but see, that carries, you pick up that little bit of blue back up there, and that's carrying that color, that tone back up there to that side. So, and it's the blue and the yellow, the blue and the gold, nice color scheme of the blue and the gold coming through here. Put a little bit of that blue right there in that center there. A little touch of it there. I just love doing that kind of stuff. And let's tone that down. And then we will call this painting. Put a little bit over here, a little mark or two. One of those going out, little marks. And we will call that a painting. Okay? Hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time. So the big thing that you take away from all of this is get rid of your mind that you're going to blend it. So if I'm going to soften two tones, you come with something that's it's right in between. Or you do like I just did on the vase, which makes it look very much like an oil-painted vase, is you walk up the scale. Start it with a little darker, walk it lighter, 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 or lighter and then slowly darker. It doesn't really make too much of a difference there which way you want to do it. But yeah, it's there's a lot of ways, but I don't lean on blending. I don't think at any time of blending, I'm thinking of tone. So if I put something on, what do I need to soften that in that particular tone? Okay, all right. Hope you enjoyed it, and go see us over on our website, Jansen Art Online. We have a lot of classes, a lot of things. I show you a lot of acrylic techniques, a lot of different types of acrylic techniques. We have landscape challenges coming. We have bird challenges coming. We have wildflower challenges coming. We have a lot of stuff coming. So hope you enjoyed. And I hope to see you over in our online classes. Okay? All right. I'll see you next time.